Howdy, this is Matthew Pizgatti. Now I know that some of these videos are extremely long, or they can become that way, so I wanted to add a quick conclusion that's just a few minutes long. I still recommend that you go watch this previous video, and this is, by the way, for new investors thinking about the DRIP BUSD garden on the animal farm, the DRIP network or ecosystem. If you're not invested, if you're already in there, this video is not really for you, but you can watch it if you're interested. Now, I still recommend going to watch through a lot of this. It's like 40 minutes long. I know that's an insane amount of time, but I really wanted to be comprehensive and cover all of the caveats. But let's just go ahead and kind of jump to a conclusion. Now, taking into account, again, that I can't recommend anything for you directly or what to do with your money because I'm not a financial advisor. I can tell you what I would do or what I think I would do in this scenario where we are at right now with the state of the whole ecosystem of DRIP and the developer and all the things. So the two ways I would look at it is that I would still go into the DRIP garden because the natural decay, the things that are built into it are there on purpose, and they serve a purpose, and I think they work for longevity, and I think the way the compounding works, compound interest is, or just compounding in general, is amazing and will beat the decay, I think. So I'm bullish on all that. I would still get into the garden, sure, but when would I do that? And this is where there's going to be two viewpoints I have. One, which I mentioned in the video, kind of somewhere mid to the end, is I would probably wait until I saw a better floor in the DRIP price because we want that LP token to come back up in value. We want that LP DRIP USD token to come back up, and DRIP is only at 70 right now. It's dropped from its all-time high. I would probably wait for a floor, like around maybe that 50, see if we kind of get some support around there again, 50, 60. If it doesn't hover around there long enough, then I honestly, just for my own selfish reasons, I would like this to go back down to the 2025 because then we could get into this, we could get in on this range when the big whales that are about to cash out in a month or so because they've hit their caps. I mean, they have other wallets, obviously, that they're building, and they're probably putting money back in as this goes on. But that'd be awesome if we could find an entry point much lower down, and say if I had a couple thousand to throw in there, whatever you had, that'd be pretty sweet. I think we could ride that all the way back up, and I think the DRIP garden will benefit as well. It'll have the same type of effect that that DRIP faucet also would have. We could ride both of those all the way back up. So I would wait for a floor. So that's one way to look at it, is to find one of those low points, like this kind of 50 support area, or down to 20 and pump in there. The other way to look at it would be that because of the power of this compounding, because of how quickly you can get plants, if you were going to enter with a smaller bag, like you had 400, 500 plants, it might still make sense to even hop in now, in my viewpoint, because from my perspective, because you'd have, let's say this takes, I don't know, let's say it takes another month or two to fall, and then however long to rise. If you were compounding regularly, you'd have all this time that you could be compounding plants, be adding plants, and then once that started to ramp back up, your dollar amount and LP, well, your dollar amount equivalent would rapidly climb that you could harvest in a day. So those are the two perspectives I would look at it from. And so if I were thinking about investing in this ecosystem, or specifically in the garden rather than, say, the faucet, etc., those are the two ways I might look at it, is that we could enter in some type of floor or compound, have all that extra time to compound and ride it back up. So those are a few different ways to look at it for sure. But I think from what I'm looking at that I would still enter the system. But I can understand being apprehensive due to that decay that we talked about in the last video. And if you don't fully understand all the components of that, still a lot of it is based on this price from DRIP, and that's just making it look like that decay is ridiculous percentages over the last couple weeks. But I think it's important to note that when you hear people talking about, if you jump in a Telegram for the DRIP garden and they say there's a 3%, there's a 4% decay, I think that's a little bit misleading because, like I've mentioned previously, they're normally averaging that. Either they're only looking at it over a couple day time span on their averages, or they're not averaging at all basically at that point because they're not looking at historical data. And if they looked at 3 weeks, 4 weeks, as far back as they could go, looking at other videos from other people, they would see that the overall decay is not as high as they think it is. Not only that, but if this DRIP BUSD swings back up, if it goes back up to where I bought in, like around 39, 40, you can see that it was actually over like around 45 at one point. If it swings back up that direction, you're going to see, depending on, across whatever timeline it takes to swing that way, you could see a 25% correction back the other way, which, the way this LP calculator works, I have seen it go up, this portion per plant. This can go up in a day. Now, I don't know if that DRIP BUSD relationship to this number is strong enough that you'd see like a 25% swing up instantly, but if anything, you might see a decline in the amount of decay. You would see that decrease at a slower level, or it may just stagnate for a few days to make up that 20-25% increase. But I think it would allow a lot of people to catch back up from what they're seeing. If they're just staring at dollar amounts, they're seeing a drop that's not really reflective. This 1.152, as I was just showing on that overview there, this hasn't updated for the hour, I guess, but 1.152 is higher than, 147. That one doesn't, I hadn't compounded there, that one doesn't really count, but 152 is higher than 147. It's higher than whatever math. No, that one's a little bit higher, but I was at, 147, 146, and then I mentioned in the last video this was probably a referral, but 0.058 there, 0.055, 53, 52, 51. That might have been a referral or just a big compound, but 4.4. And so you can see, despite these huge peaks there when I probably had a referral, in the moments where I'm just compounding regularly like anyone else, this LP value, the daily LP looks like it's coming up for me. I'm compounding almost every plant though. Speaking of which, do I have one ready? Not yet. But, so I've mentioned a few different ways that you could look at it. Obviously, this is only if you're bullish in the DRIP ecosystem to begin with, If you're not, if you don't think that the DRIP token, the DRIP ecosystem, the network, the developer, if you don't have trust in any of that, you don't think these new projects coming down the line are going to boost value of the DRIP token, then if I were advising you based on those thoughts, or if I was advising a person based on those thoughts, I would say that, well, for one, it's completely up to you. Do your own research. And if you're not bullish on the system, then 100% don't go into it. Why would you, unless you had faith that it was coming back up? That would be kind of silly. So, but you should do that with any project. So even if the project's at an all-time high and you think it's going to continue to be at that all-time high, if it drops, what changed to make you think that you don't have faith in the project anymore? That's always a question for me. I get that there's a panic type of selling that happens where you're like, oh no, it's dropping, which means the whole system's failing. But sometimes that fails to account for everything else. There had to have been good drops in notable blue chip stocks that you could think about, or other projects that have lasted a while. And to me, some of these projects that we're seeing in the DeFi space now are very unique. They're kind of hard to predict because we're seeing longevity of 1 year, 2 year, 3 year projects. People are getting better at coding this, and even if they're all, you could say they're Ponzi's, whatever you wanted, pyramids. There's all types of words being thrown around, which I think's absolute bonkers to begin with. I think all economic systems are essentially Ponzi's or pyramids in a way, because if everyone who is in the system doesn't value whatever it is, nothing has value. Even down to gold and silver only has value because we decide to value it. Now, that's a physical asset we're talking about, so that's a little different. But when you talk about the digital numbers on your screen, well, you think that has value. Sure, you think that because you could go get cash now, but what about in 20 years, 40 years, 50 years when they fully realize a non-cashless society? What if there is nothing that backs it up? It's still just the value, the idea that I can trade this for something else. So in that regard, I think everything is kind of what you might call a Ponzi. Like, unless people are investing in it, and even down to stocks. A stock is not really a physical asset. I mean, in theory, you have a share of the company, you can attend shareholder meetings, and that gives you some privilege, but it's still not a physical asset. I still can't walk into the company, usually, and go sit on my 0.005 share in a corner somewhere. That's not a thing. So even in that regard, we're just giving a value to the company, and if people want to pay that amount for the stock, it's worth that much because that's what it's valued at. That's what it's being bought, sold at. So I wouldn't throw that at any of these schemes. Now, some of these protocols or games are shady. They are made by shady developers, and they're just not trustworthy. And you really don't have a way to separate the wheat from the chaff in that regard. You can kind of look at their background, looking at this developer. He does have good, solid projects. And like the faucet that's made a lot of people money, he has those under his belt and projects before that. But in all fairness, he's not doxed. He's not amazing at the timeliness of launching some of these new projects. They'll get delayed a day, things like that. That could also be seen as attention to detail, trying to iron things out. And he definitely needs a PR or somebody who, could run his team a little better. But people have made money. They have been making money almost a year in the faucet. And now in these other projects, there are still people making money, but they are games. So they are games. You can't really know which developers you can trust and who you can, who you can't. And that's why you just have to do your own research and decide if you want to get into the thing or not. And that really is it at the end of the day. Does the system look good? Has it been running a little while? Is it trustworthy? And do you trust the dev team behind it? Now, that being said, like I have mentioned and others mentioned today in some videos I saw come out, the dev does need some type of PR or somebody to run their Telegram channels and whatnot, because the admins and those are not that great, and it's hard to get questions answered, which is why YouTubers like myself, who are I really don't like that term, by the way, people who are making videos to try to help out and document what we're doing, we're including the information that we wish we had, which is the point of that long overview video I just posted and this one now. I want you to know what I know and what I've learned about this, and then base your own thoughts on that, based off of that. So should you invest in it? I mean, I can't tell you what to do, but those are the two ways that I would look at it if I were bullish on this ecosystem. And if you're not, I would ignore all of this completely and continue on your way. And if you already are invested and you made it this far into the video, I'm interested to hear any extra comments you have or something I missed. Perhaps you think I've misrepresented the whole economic sphere in general by implying that nothing actually has value and that everything's subjective, but I think that's a pretty deep philosophical discussion to have. At the end of the day, that really is how I view it, and that's why a lot of these things that people may mention, Ponzi's or scams or this or that, it's only a scam if there's malicious intent. There's only a scam if there's malicious intent and if people are not being successful. When the wide majority of people are being successful in something like the drip ecosystem, drip faucet, and then they just start panicking and whining about it when the token price drops for a lot of very obvious reasons that it's dropping, not even really a mystery. To me that's a little silly when we have good partnerships coming down the line. But all that being said, I'll say it every single time, none of us can predict this. I mean, the negativity really doesn't help unless you have actual data and you're bringing some actual argument. I don't think any of the negativity really helps, which is why some of those Telegram channels do ban things like that if it's just negativity and no kind of helpful criticism. But all that being said, you should be able to always ask questions. You should be able to ask questions. You should be able to bring valid concerns to the table. And I don't think those channels do a good enough job of that, of letting those come to the table and actually discussing them. And it may be just because there's so many thousands of people in there that it's kind of hard to have a discussion. And so I think more AMAs need to be done, especially lately, to let us know what's coming down the pipeline. But yeah, that's all I have on the drip BUSD garden. I wanted to make a semi-quick video, which I now see maybe over 11 or 15 minutes. I can't see the small timer down there. I'm sitting across the room from the monitor, but this is shorter than the 40-minute video, and this was my kind of recap as to which way you might think about going. But do your own research. And if you have any other questions or comments, hop into the Telegram that I've linked. That's my Telegram in the description. Or just throw a comment with your question. And as always, thanks for watching. I appreciate likes and subscribes. That really shows me that I'm helping and kind of which direction I should keep going if it looks like I'm headed in the right direction. So I do appreciate that. You guys all have a great one. Thanks for watching. See you on the next video.